All right, we saw all of that ceremony today. We'll get question time back tomorrow, obviously, and Thursday. Tomorrow also we'll get that updated inflation data. And Thursday morning, that's when we'll have all eyes on the Treasurer as he delivers his economic update. Joining me now from the ground in Canberra to go through all of this and more, Sky News political editor, Andrew Clennell. Andrew, welcome. Great to have you on the show. You've been off getting fired up to sit with us now on the return of Parliament. This legislation, this 43% emissions target bill by 2030, it's there, ready to go. The Coalition, with some exceptions, of course, are going to knock it back. It's inconsistent with what they took to the election. So Labor look like they're prepared to give a bit of ground to the Greens. They want the target as high as 75%. They want this ban on new coal and gas projects. Is there any sense that Labor will roll over, or will it be the Greens that roll over in the upper house?
Well, I'm actually sitting here wondering if you're a Collingwood or an Essendon fan, Peter. Just perhaps
I'm Richmond, mate. I'm Richmond. I was just sharing the love.
Great game though, wasn't it? Great game. Anyway, I believe, from the information I've got the last couple of days, the Greens will roll over, if you want to call it that. I think that they'll get some concessions, like the one you mentioned they got today from Chris Bowen in terms of the target being a floor, not a ceiling. They won't get a coal and gas moratorium. They won't get 75%. But I think that they will back the bill because after negotiating as hard as they can. There's no guarantees there for Anthony Albanese, but I think what this means is in the short term at least, and you would argue very differently in the long term and medium term, but in the short term, this will be more of a political problem for Peter Dutton than Anthony Albanese. Why? Because I'm aware that there are 4 or 5 Liberal MPs, after some calls I made before coming on with you, who are said to be considering crossing the floor. It's not just Bridget Archer and Andrew Bragg. Now, it'll be kicked off, it'll be introduced into the House tomorrow, it'll be kicked off to a Senate inquiry, and it'll be reported for 2 months, this division in the Liberal ranks. Now, as you know, Peter, the target is in place. They don't need this law, as you well know, having dealt as a Chief of Staff with this sort of policy, they do not need this law. So a cynic, and you know I'm a bit of one, would suggest this is perhaps a wedge on the libs, if anything, that Albanese is attempting here. The government says it's giving the renewable industry certainty, and they want it. That may be the case, but it also happens to act as a potential political wedge and a political football and cause some issues for Peter Dutton internally.
Just don't divulge your sources. I know you wouldn't do that, but are any of those people you've spoken to contemplating a move across to vote with Labor front benchers?
No.
No, well, there's no price on the backbench if you cross the floor. Of course, there is a price if you're a front bencher in government or opposition. You have to quit your job. That's when you really see whether it's guts and grit and principle, or whether it's a bit of grandstanding, can I say. The economy, forget all the other stuff we're talking about, as important as the climate debate's been over the last decade. I mean, truly it's going to come down, I think, to inflation data tomorrow, Thursday's response to it. I think that is the template for the next few months of political fortunes for the government. What do you think?
I think it's definitely the case. I think we could see 7% as an annual rate tomorrow. If we don't, we'll certainly see it in the following quarter. I think there's a bit of a view within government that they're going to cop it on the inflation and cost of living front for a year or two, but the hope is inflation settles down in time for the next election and that they can avoid a recession. And I think that's the hope of the government. They're going to cut into the budget. They're going to do what they can with the levers they have, bearing in mind it's a worldwide inflation problem. They're going to see rates go up. They're going to see people not very happy, but they will be hoping that the election cycle is on their side when it comes to that issue.
All right, well, just on that point, if they want to avoid a recession, they need to do something more about foot and mouth, because go back to the GFC, 2008, thereabouts. The only reason we didn't go into a recession at that time was the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector saved Australia to not have those 2 quarters of negative growth. This time round, it's real, it's potent, it's on our doorstep, and there's a genuine fear amongst the ag sector that not enough is being done in Canberra. That'd be my message to the government.
So the government believes that if you cut the border to Indonesia, the industry suffers significantly anyway. And their advice is there's a 10% chance or thereabouts of the disease coming into Australia. From what you're saying, that's enough to take that measure to close the border. You're one of the first people to say close the border to China when coronavirus came along. I guess we'll see. If it gets in here, Peter Dutton and David Littleproud are setting it up so Anthony Albanese can be blamed. If it doesn't, Anthony Albanese's had another stroke of luck.
I tell you, when the live cattle trade issue happened, part of it was, of course, the cessation of protein going to Indonesia. But the other part of it was the messaging, how it was conveyed to Indonesia and the fact that the trade literally stopped within days. I think you can navigate a border closure, provided you're supporting Indonesia on the other side to get the outbreak under control and open up again. I think that's the challenge for the government. I don't think they're doing enough at the Indonesian end. I said before I'm an AFL girl, I'm not an NRL girl, but I tell you what, you can't miss that controversy today. The gay pride jersey that some players in Manly would wear, 7 out of, what do you have in a game up there? 13, 14, 15, something like that, 15. It's extraordinary. It's the biggest story around the town. Here was a tweet from that New South Wales Treasurer Matt Keane this afternoon. I couldn't believe this. He says, someone tell those 7 Manly players that rainbow isn't contagious, but wearing it might make them better for showing pride and respect for different people. If there's an NRL Pride round next year, he says, I hope the Mighty Dragons go red, white and rainbow. The polls, about 80% plus are supporting the players here, Andrew, in their right to religious freedom. I have to say, if someone said to me, wear a footy jersey that's against your beliefs, let's say, Peta Credlin, you've got to wear a Extinction Rebellion strip, I wouldn't get on the field either. I mean, what's your view?
Well, he's going for the teal vote, isn't he? And pretty transparent about it, as he has been on the climate issue, Matt Keane. And I'd say that's what that tweet's about. But yeah, I'm sure it will arouse some controversy. And I think, change government, change the country. Well, I think Scott Morrison, if he had been re-elected, would be on the side of those 7 players. That wasn't the case in Anthony Albanese's comments today. So there is a different view with a change of government down here on that particular
What if it
issue.
was the Canterbury Bulldogs or another team? What if it was another team out west that you were demanding they wear the Pride jersey? Would that change things?
Or South Sydney, his own team. That would be the biggest test for the PM, I think, Peter.
Right, talk to me about this saga now in New South Wales. John Barilaro, the New York job, hasn't gone away. Bombshell revelations today would appear to confirm the Premier was aware that a senior bureaucrat had been identified as the preferred candidate for the job. Now, that contradicts what he told the Parliament, the Premier told the Parliament in June. If Dominic Perrottet has misled the Parliament, it doesn't get much more serious than that.
Well, it's an enormous problem there. There is a view within the senior ranks of the New South Wales government tonight that Stuart Ayres should go over this. But the problem for Dominic Perrottet is he was Treasurer at the time, and was he in on the appointment, if you like? In which case he couldn't get rid of Stuart Ayres as his deputy anyway. So I'm going to show you this document now. Stuart Ayres told Parliament, point blank, that no suitable candidate was found and they went and got Barilaro. Well, this is from August last year. And this is Stuart Ayres approving Jenny West's appointment to that job. And he signed it. That is a bit of a problem for him in terms of an allegation he misled Parliament. You're supposed to resign if you mislead Parliament. Call me old-fashioned, Peter. And an interesting fact, though, is the documents that were provided to Parliament, a similar document went to Dominic Perrottet, and he never signed it. It is unsigned. So the question is, why didn't he sign it?
Good Lord.
Did he not want his hands on it? Did he not want his fingerprints on it? Did he just refer it to the minister? Some might argue that's smart practice in the circumstance. There are people, believe it or not, I don't think this will happen, talking about whether Dominic Perrottet will survive this scandal and whether he will be rolled in Macquarie Street tonight. And I'm talking about Liberals saying that. But I think that's highly unlikely. But he needs this scandal to go away. The election is in March. It's been going for 5 weeks now. And geez, I'd love it if the Australian would do a news poll in New South Wales, Peter, because I'd like to see where the New South Wales government is at. We'll be covering that election. I'd like to know a few months out what their stocks are like.
Well, you just put something up there on the screen there. Serious questions for Stuart Ayres. We'll follow that up. Andrew Clennell, geez, you've got a busy week. Thank you for your time.